Tom left his home today, anticipating a pivotal day ahead. He had been employed at a construction company for 2 years, and today was crucial, as executives from headquarters were visiting. They planned to replace the outgoing branch manager and appoint a successor. There were 3 candidates, each well-prepared, required to present a development plan for the company. Tom had worked on his plan for almost a month and was confident his was the best. He loved his job. From his childhood, Tom was an avid reader. That's when he decided he would become a builder and construct with integrity, unlike those who built the shoddy apartment complex in their neighborhood where kids often played. One day, a concrete slab shifted under Tom's feet. He screamed, tried to grab onto something but couldn't, and fell 10 feet down onto a pile of gravel and broken concrete. He didn't black out at first and felt no pain, but then panic set in because he tried to stand, and sharp pain shot through his body. His friends, along with some adults, were already rushing towards him. 6 months in the hospital, 3 surgeries followed. Tom barely understood what was happening. He just begged his mom to take him home. "Mom, please, I can't take it anymore. Take me home." She just cried and kissed him. Sometimes his dad would sit by his bed, silently holding his hand. After half a year, he was allowed to go home for 3 months, but only temporarily. By then, Tom was mature enough to understand. He was 10 years old. Early one morning, while his parents thought he was sleeping, Tom overheard them in the kitchen. "Mark, what are we going to do? The surgery is next month and we're out of money." "Linda, what do you want me to do? Sell a kidney? Find someone to buy it?" "But you know that's not right. We need to figure something out." "Linda, we just have to delay the surgery." "Are you crazy? You heard the doctor. Every month we wait reduces his chances." A chair clattered in the kitchen as Dad had stood up abruptly. "Linda, I'm doing all I can. We've drained our savings, you know that?" "But no, you're asking too much of me." "I'm not asking anything, Linda. It just feels like you don't care. Do you even realize our son might never walk again?" "I know. And what have you done to help him get back on his feet? Your accounting job barely covers the bills." But Mark had already stormed out, slamming the door. Tom heard his mother's approaching footsteps. He closed his eyes tightly, pretending to sleep so the tears wouldn't show. Every day, the boy awaited his return to the hospital, but as time passed, he realized they hadn't found the money, and he might be bedridden indefinitely. He immersed himself in reading, which tired his eyes, but helped him sleep. Then something happened that split his life into before and after. His mother, the person he cherished most, left him. It happened one morning. Mom entered his room in her street clothes, placed a small bag on the floor, and sat on the edge of his bed. "How are you, son?" He set aside his book as usual. "Where are you going, Mom?" "I need to leave, Tom. I came to say goodbye. I want you to know I love you more than life itself. Everything will be okay, I promise." Linda quickly kissed Tom and rushed out. At first, he didn't realize she was leaving for good. Dad was there to comfort him, and a week later, he found the money for the surgery. After Tom took his first step post-surgery, he decided he no longer had a mother. His father became his entire world. Almost another year of rehab, and finally, Tom was able to return to school. His dad had managed to arrange for him to take catch-up exams, allowing him to rejoin his classmates. Time passed, and his dad introduced him to Elaine. Tom wasn't fond of her, but always remained polite, not wanting to upset his dad. He approached his new car, pausing to admire it. As he was about to get in, he noticed a woman on the sidewalk looking intently at him. At first, Tom thought she might be someone he knew, but realizing her outdated clothes, concluded she was a stranger. The car pulled away, and the woman pulled a photo from her pocket. In the photo was a much younger Tom. She sighed contentedly, grabbed her bag and hurried off, surely to return later. That evening, when Tom came home from work in high spirits, everything had gone as planned. Today, he had been promoted to branch manager. Few achieved so much at just 29. He parked the car and opened the trunk, revealing a cake and a bottle of champagne. He had called his dad from work and asked him to prepare dinner at home. He had heard Elaine suggest they could have gone to a restaurant, but he didn't want to spoil his mood. He wanted to celebrate at home with his dad, who had sacrificed so much for him. Tom turned around. There stood the mourning woman. Up close, she was quite pretty, with blue eyes and a light brown ponytail. Perhaps they did know each other after all. He pondered the possibilities, but came up empty. Then he conceded, "Yes, we know each other. No, we're not acquainted. Thank God, but I need to talk to you." He raised an eyebrow. The woman seemed openly hostile to him. Maybe he had met her at a colleague's lake house. They had had a great time that weekend, and honestly, Tom didn't remember much of it. "Well then, let's talk. I can spare you 5 minutes, which is all I need. Here's the address where your mother is. She's very ill. If you don't want to help her, at least come and visit. You may not get another chance." Tom jerked his hand back, which he had initially extended mechanically for the piece of paper. "I don't have a mother." The woman looked him in the eyes. "You're mistaken. You do have one. And no matter how much you try to hide from it, she won't just disappear." "All right, let it be, but I don't want to see her. Take the address and just think about how not everything in life is as it seems to us. Goodbye." She shoved the slip of paper into his hand and quickly walked away. The evening was spoiled, and he didn't even know why. He told his father nothing, probably just not wanting to spoil his mood. His father didn't deserve that. 2 days passed, and Tom kept thinking about the note that lay in his pocket. On Saturday, after another restless night, he finally decided to go and simply look into the eyes of the woman who had abandoned him in such a state. It took a long time to find the right apartment. He circled the streets full of old buildings and just couldn't find the right one. Then he saw her, the same woman. He stopped. "Hey, how's it going?" The woman turned around, surprised, and smiled. "You came after all. I just want to look them in the eye. Show me how to find this apartment." "It's right behind you." Tom turned around and cursed. There was even a number on the door that he had stubbornly ignored. He climbed the old creaky stairs to the second floor, reached out to ring the doorbell, and then lowered his hand. Mom. He couldn't remember anything bad, just how she loved him, cried at his bedside, and stroked his hand while he pretended to sleep. He needed to pull himself together. This was the same woman who had left him, frightened by the challenges. Dad said he had tried to convince her to stay, promised to find the money, but Mom wouldn't listen. Apparently, she already had someone who was more valuable to her than her son. The doorbell rang unexpectedly loudly. Tom noticed that the door was ajar. He entered and immediately heard a voice. "Jesse, is that you?" It was his mom's voice. Tom stepped forward. "No, it's not Jesse." The woman lying on the couch groaned. "Son, Tommy, yes, it's me." She tried to stand but couldn't. Tom stood before her, unable to make himself help her, not wanting to touch her. She understood his resentment. "Son, sit down. There's a chair." He sat down and looked around. From every corner, poverty stared back at him, stark and complete. It was clean, but the feeling that he was in some sort of shelter didn't pass. A woman outside cursed loudly. His mother smiled slightly. "That's the neighbors. They're always like this here. How are you, son?" Tom smiled. "Don't you think it's a bit late to be asking such questions?" "Sorry." He was silent, feeling his mother studying him. Then he noticed a childhood photo next to the couch. What a hypocrite. Now it's all clear to me. Apparently that guy left her a long time ago. Maybe just like that, or maybe because she got sick. Somehow she found out that everything in my life is wonderful and decided to extort money. Well, of course, this all explains why you tracked me down. What do you want, money? Then don't put on a show in front of me. Get up. Maybe at least you can offer me some tea. Linda tried to stand again, managed to lower her feet to the floor but had no strength to go further. She quietly started crying. "Sorry, son. I can't stand up." The door slammed and Jessica appeared in the room. She immediately rushed to Linda's aid. "Linda, have you lost your mind? You absolutely cannot stand up." The girl quickly laid the woman back down and then turned to Tom. "What are you looking at? Why did you let her?" "Well, maybe I should have put her to bed. I figured out your scheme. You could have just asked for money instead of making up all this drama." Jessica narrowed her eyes and advanced on him. "Money? Yes, you could never repay all that money. Who needs you here?" "Jesse, don't. He doesn't know anything." Linda sobbed heavily. Jessica crossed her arms. "It's very convenient not to know. You sleep better, right, Tommy? Everything's fine with you? Well, then leave. Mom saw you, and that's enough." "Yes, you. Yes, you. Do you want to get up from the couch where Linda was lying?" A sigh was heard. Jessica abruptly turned around, rushed to her, and yelled, "Tom, call an ambulance quickly. She has a weak heart." Tom fumbled with his phone, not understanding what was happening, that she had indeed called him to see him before her death, perhaps to ask for forgiveness. The ambulance took Linda away, and he followed the ambulance, making sure his mother received all the necessary care. Then he asked the doctor, "When can I visit her?" "Tomorrow in the afternoon, definitely come. Things are not very good." Tom left the hospital and immediately saw Jessica crying on a bench near the entrance. He approached, sat down next to her. "Why are you crying? The doctor said you can visit tomorrow." She looked up at him with tear-filled eyes. Really? Really? Maybe you can take me home, if it's not too much trouble." Tom drove out of the hospital parking lot. "Well, I guess I'll have to come tomorrow to give my mother a chance to apologize and calm down. If she's hoping for some relationship, she's mistaken." They arrived at the already familiar buildings. "Where to?" Jessica, who had been silent the whole way, said, "I live in the same building as Aunt Linda, just in a different entrance. So, you're neighbors." She looked at him strangely, then smiled. "That's very strange." Tom was embarrassed. "No, just, are you going to visit Mom tomorrow?" "Yes, I promised the doctor I'd come. Tell me what time you'll go." Tom felt a sense of satisfaction. Did she have a crush on him or what? Dressed so modestly, yet still, she had a nice figure and a pretty face. "Around 3 o'clock? All right, I'll come later. I don't think you'll stay long." "Why later?" Tom thought he might have misunderstood something. Jessica had already gotten out of the car, but before closing the door, she answered, "So I don't have to run into you." The door slammed, and Tom watched her for a while, finally shaking his head. Jessica was no longer on the street. Apparently, she had disappeared into the building. He slapped his hands on the steering wheel. "This is completely outrageous. What does she think she's doing, playing Mother Teresa?" He drove home, fury boiling inside him. "She thinks she can make me feel guilty? No way. They found the wrong guy. Let them all go to hell. I'm not even thinking about going to the hospital tomorrow. Let them sort out this mess themselves." Tom was so angry that he didn't notice the red traffic light, the screeching of brakes, a crash, and then darkness. He couldn't wake up, or rather, he wasn't asleep but still couldn't wake up. There was no pain, just some emptiness around him, but he understood that he could hear everything. Why couldn't he wake up? Then faint steps, very soft, barely audible. "Hello, oh yes. The little vixen, surely Jessica." He made a tremendous effort and opened his eyes. Jessica, and it was indeed her, immediately vanished. A second later, a doctor's face appeared. "What's your name?" "Tom Anderson." "How old are you?" 29, perfect." The doctor shone a flashlight into Tom's eyes, who immediately squinted. "Very well, rest now." The man disappeared, and Jessica appeared again. "I wasn't here long. Your relatives just left. What an unpleasant stepmother you have. How did you live with her? She turned everyone upside down here to get a paper stating you wouldn't become disabled after the accident. Your father tried to calm her, but she screamed, 'I'm filing for divorce. I won't live with your cripple under the same roof.' Not surprised, I'm starting to get used to it." "What, that everyone abandons me whenever something happens to me?" "Yes." Jessica's eyes sparkled fiercely. She caught her breath but then continued, "You shouldn't think that way. Although who am I telling this to? I thought you hit your head so hard that your brains would reset. But no, they stayed where they were. You know, I initially had a better opinion of you, or rather, hoped you'd at least try to find out the truth to understand who's actually at fault. But you..." Jessica couldn't find the right words. "Anyway, get well." She walked to the door. Tom watched her go and closed his eyes. He never thought that there could be people who, in just 2 minutes, could get on his nerves this much, especially while he was lying here, doped up on whatever they kept giving him. What truth was she always talking about? What didn't he know that could immediately change his opinion about almost everything in the world? His head started to hurt. Now he wanted to know the terrible secret Jessica kept talking about. On the other hand, she could have just told him everything herself. Her husband, if she ever finds one, is not in for a smooth ride. That evening, the doctor came. "How are you feeling?" "All right, I guess. What can I say? It's not that bad. You can slowly start sitting up. The impact was to the forehead, but your forehead turned out to be strong." Tom sat up. His head spun, but it was bearable. "Doctor, a woman was admitted here yesterday, Linda. Probably Anderson, but it might be a different last name. How can I find her?" The doctor slapped his forehead. "Oh, I've been wondering where I remembered you from. It was you who came with her. Yes, I attended to her. She's in room 7, the department across this one. I need to get there. No, such long walks are not needed yet. Let's observe you for another day or two, then you can go on your travels. The doctor left. Tom waited another half hour. The hospital was already quiet. He slowly approached the door, peeked into the corridor. No one was there. Only nurses' voices carried from afar. Apparently, the girls were chatting. Tom edged along the wall to the door of the department, cracked it open, and stepped into the corridor. He paused for a bit, and then moved to the opposite door. The corridor was also empty, a very good time he had chosen. The patients were fed and settled. Now the staff could eat and rest. Room 7 was right in front of him, no time to think. He pulled the door toward him, his eyes slowly adjusted to the semi-darkness. As they did, he saw his mother lying by the window. 2 beds were empty, and at the other end, some woman was sleeping. Tommy, she must have felt him, looked frightened at the bandage on his head. What happened to you, son? Nonsense, I bumped my head. You know why I came? She shook her head negatively. You have to tell me why you left me. I thought I didn't care about it, but now I realize I want to know. I want to understand who you met on your path that made you decide to leave a sick child. She was silent for a minute, then replied, I didn't leave you, Tom. I simply had no other choice. Lies. I remember how you came to say goodbye to me. No one forcibly dragged you out of the house. You made that decision on your own. Well, yes, of course, no one forced me. Now just tell me the reason, and I'll go. Honestly, Tom was disappointed. Only now did he realize he had entertained the thought that after his mother's explanation, he might forgive her. But if not entirely, then a little. He wanted to help in her treatment, maybe something else. But how to help someone who had treated him like this? The reason is you. I understand a sick child is a burden, but you didn't leave into the void. All right, I'll tell you everything. But it's not a short story. I'm not in a hurry. Linda sighed, closed her eyes. Your surgery was postponed again and again. I realized that with each delay, the chances of success diminished. We had no money at all. I tried to take out loans. I even put up our house as collateral, but the offers were so low, they wouldn't even cover half of the expenses. 3 months after you were discharged, I started noticing that your father smelled of other women's perfume, and there were lipstick marks on his shirt. That's when I realized that Mark would not help. He had distanced himself and had his own life separate from ours. I had to act, and quickly. Tom, completely bewildered, stared at his mother. That couldn't be right. His dad was always there for him. He found the money, though Tom never asked where it came from. Moreover, he remembers well that after the surgery, their life seemed to improve. His dad had started his own small business. Yes, he was never home, but Tom, though young, understood that his father had to work hard. His mother continued, exhausted from her trips to the banks. I was sitting on a park bench crying when an old friend saw me. I hadn't seen her in almost a year. We talked and she scolded your father. She was so upset, and as we parted, she said she'd think about it, and if she came up with something, she would call me. I don't know if it was luck, but just 2 days later, her boss's daughter fatally hit someone with her car and fled the scene. Seeing that her boss was distraught, she asked if anything had happened. They were close, so she told her everything. Together, they devised a solution. She called me in the middle of the night and said her boss was willing to pay twice as much as needed for the operation. I had 1 hour to decide. Your father was not home. She said the remaining money could be used to hire the best lawyer who would minimize my sentence. Yes, they offered me to take the blame for her daughter, and I agreed, understanding I wouldn't see you for a long time. But it meant you could run again like before. Your father only came home at dawn. I told him everything. He supported me and said he would do everything to ensure I got the minimum sentence. He couldn't come to the trial because he was with you in the hospital. Elaine didn't come either, but I knew you were being taken care of and thought they would reconsider the case later. Then I was sentenced to 9 years. I don't know why so long. They must have found something else, or maybe the person who died was not just anybody. As you understand, there was no case review, no lawyers, nothing. I couldn't tell the truth. It would have made things worse. The money had been paid, and your operation was done. The woman kept her promise. I was released after 7 years and immediately went home. I so wanted to see you, but Elaine answered the door. Yes, it was she who insisted that everything be left as is. It was she whom our father was visiting at night. I don't blame him. Not everyone could endure what we had at home back then. In my mind, the pieces fell into place. The money, a better life, Elaine. It all seemed so simple, yet I always thought it was even simpler I left. Elaine explained that you hated me, and that your father loved her. You had a family, and I was no longer needed. I rented this cheap apartment in the building and got a job at a factory. I often came by the house, then by your college, watched you from afar, cried, admired you. You grew up to be such a handsome, smart man, and I'm so proud of you. I would never have interfered. But Jessica, once I made the mistake of telling her everything, and she's been seething with indignation all this time. When I fell ill, she decided to find you. I was against it, but she is stubborn. Yes, indeed. Tom was silent for a while, processing the information, getting used to it. Why didn't you come to me sooner? Why didn't you tell me? If you hadn't listened, I would have written you a letter. Linda was silent. He managed to say, Mom, do you hear? Again, silence. Tom rushed to the bed. Linda's hand dangled limply. Her cheeks were wet with tears, her eyes closed and white, her lips somehow blue. Mom, he touched her, and her other hand also slipped. Tom grabbed his mother by the shoulders. Mom, Mommy, not now, please. He shook her and cried, tears streaming down his face. Linda's head bobbed on the pillow. Someone pulled him away from the bed. Then he felt a needle in his shoulder, and darkness. He didn't want to. He wanted to be there with his mother. He woke up in his own room, his father sitting beside him. Tom looked at him, not understanding how he was supposed to live now, why life couldn't be without hatred. He had hated his mother, and now it turns out he needed to hate his father. Mark stirred, opened his eyes. Son, is everything Mom told me true? Mark looked into his son's eyes. Yes, Tom, it's all true. I'm sorry that's how it happened. I understand if you don't want to see me, and you know you're right. I've bought a ticket to my sister's. Her husband died. It's hard for her alone with 2 kids. I'll live there. I've left everything to you. You'll find the documents at home. Elaine has gone to someone more fortunate. Goodbye, son, and forgive me if you can. Father headed to the door, as if waiting for Tom to call out to him, hoping very much, but Tom held back. Son, why are you running around? It's your wedding today and you're acting like a boy. Linda smiled at her son, who was alternately putting on a tie and then a bow tie. She had just returned 2 months ago from Germany, where she underwent a complex heart operation paid for by Tom selling his father's business as soon as he learned the operation was possible. Linda tried to dissuade him, but Tom was adamant. That money belonged to you. Linda looked much younger, as if she had shed 20 years. Mom, how can I not be nervous? You know Jessica, she might change her mind 18 times and run away. Linda laughed. She won't change her mind. She loves you. Mom, really? You really think so? He sat next to his mother on the sofa and she hugged him. Of course. I even think she fell in love with you the first time she saw you. Just don't tell on me. Or you'll get it, they laughed. Now they had a family and even shared secrets.